Aloha everybody and welcome to the Wild Wahine. My name is Kaylani and this is your Astro weekly forecast for this week. So I pick a couple of transits that I think are going to be the most poignant in your life so that you can work with the energy so you can make fantastic choices in your life. So we have a couple of different ones that we're going to go through. We're starting off with Venus conjunct Mars. Now we're going to be feeling that today and tomorrow. It's going exact, but we'll be feeling the energy all the way until the 18th. So Venus is conjuncting Mars. I'm super excited about this particular transit. It's this really beautiful conjunction that's happening that has like a lot of high highs and potentially some low lows. But what's cool about this particular conjunction is you will be able to see it. So we're not always able to see everything, of course, because some of the planets are not visible to the naked eye, like Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto. But this is Venus and Mars. These are planets that are close to our planet, so we'll be able to see it. So make sure tonight, also tomorrow night, and they say potentially depending upon where you are in the world, you might be able to see it on the 14th as well. As soon as the sun goes down, you will see a beautiful crescent moon in Leo, and then you will be able to see both Venus and Mars conjunct. They will look like they're almost like a finger apart. Obviously, they're like millions of miles away from each other. However, from our vantage point, they are in conjunction, they are in alignment, along with the new moon, along with the moon. So we just went through both Venus and Mars going through a tough T-square with Saturn and Uranus. So they're both a bit beat up. That deeply affected our relationships in various different ways. Now, Venus and Mars are kind of squaring off in this conjunction. We have the goddess of love, which would be Venus, which has to do with all things that are beautiful, bringing things together, has to do with desire, has to do with pleasure. And we have the god of war, which is Mars, and that's all about separation, aggression, passion, power, and all of the things that activate us in our lives. So when we have love and kind of action and war coming together, when they actually came together in Greek mythology, they had a daughter and her name was Harmonia, or in Roman mythology, her name was Concordia. So with love and war coming together, it brings harmony. You know, harmony is the middle place between these two. And so we're looking forward to this conjunction to bring a little bit of harmony, especially in our interpersonal relationships. So some of the really beautiful positive aspects that can come out of this is some balance, is coming together and meeting in the middle. It can be, you know, both Venus and Mars are in the sign of Leo, so it's about playfulness, it's about romance, it can be about deep passion, about sensuality. It has to do with like the body and the athleticism of the body. So dance, sensual dance, doing, you know, creating beautiful things or sculpting beautiful things. It could be about entertainment, having fun. You know, Leo energy very much is on a platform and likes to perform and have fun and have a group around it and kind of seeing itself through other people. So it could be entertaining, it could be going out dancing, going out with friends, going out to parties, having a party or something where you're entertaining people. It could really energize and strengthen your love. It can bring passion back into a relationship, back into a friendship, like energy to a situation, especially if it's a creative project. You know, when you have Mars and Venus come together, it makes you remember why you started what you started instead of all the contracts and the billing and the paperwork. You know, you fall in love again with what you did. There's this quality with Venus about like crushing on things, loving things, falling in love again with something. It's about having crushes on people. It's all about like just looking at something like you were looking at it for the first time and having fun with it, in terms of like, you know, putting more energy and putting more passion into places that have been a bit stagnant or places which had been like difficult. Now, as with everything, we do have, you know, another side of that, and you know, that tends to be like the more challenging side. And with that, you know, there can be a lot of contention. There can be kind of more of an aggressive way of like a forcing of sorts to make sure everything's okay, which kind of sort of doesn't work, because you know, you have to kind of be open to come together. This is something that can happen for people who are in relationships with people where it's up and down and up and down, and it's like Monday, Wednesday, and Friday it's fights, and Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday it's lovey-lovey, you know, like all of that kinds of things. So if you have, unfortunately, one of those cyclical relationships which has the high highs and the low lows, it can signify that. Even if you don't have that, you can fall potentially into that pattern, you know, with this particular energy. Just having a lot of discord, it could still be fighting, trying to figure out, you know, who wants to do it, like everyone kind of forcing their will, forcing more things in the relationship, and someone kind of not wanting to comply and wanting to do their own thing. It has to do with the physicality, the physical part of your relationships, the pleasure and the pain factor of that, and what that means, and how that, you know, manifests itself physically in your relationships or intimately in your relationships as well. Now we have the sun is going to be making some really interesting moves towards the end of the week. So it'll be a bit of a shift of energy. And I really am associating this a little bit with the movie The Little Mermaid, because it reminds me of that. So bear with me as I use this analogy, and hopefully I'm not spoiling it. This is the Disney's Little Mermaid, not the Grimm's Brothers, because that's different, even though I prefer that story, but everyone's familiar with the Disney one. The sun really has to do with the hero, right? The hero within us. It has to do with the ego, how we identify, how we're seen, how we move in the world in a very visible way. So we have the sun in Cancer, trining Neptune in Pisces. That's going to be today until the 19th. We're going to feel it. It's going to hit exact on the 15th. And so the energy of that is really going to feel a little bit more like this Cancer energy, this mothering energy, this archetypal mother energy, the place where you're nourished, the place where you feel safe, the place where you can create from. Neptune, again, is a place of illusions. It's our field of dreams. It's a place where we escape. It's our fantastical, our fantasy place. Now, if we think about Ariel in this sense, this would be her imagining what it would be like to be human, collecting all of the little trinkets that she collected from humanity and then wishing she was there and kind of sort of putting out this wish, which is very Neptunian in that sense. And she ends up going to Ursula, which at first has this kind of, sun in Cancer, this mother archetypal vibe, like, oh yes, I can help you. I can definitely help you achieve your dreams, or at least it feels like that in the beginning. So in terms of how this will affect us in our lives, this has to do with like clear dreams, clear intuition, really knowing what it is that we want and kind of going after that and manifesting that and creating that. Because Cancer is a lot about manifestation, taking things from the dream space and bringing them out and putting them like into form. It's about being sensitive to other folks and sharing your sensitivity. It's about creating new projects. And this is really tied in a lot to the new moon that we had in Cancer, where we're creating something new. We're really bringing that from the thought place into the form place, into a place where it can live. We're actually planting the seed. It's a really good time to do things that have to do with spirituality or have to do with things that are psychic in nature. So getting a tarot reading, getting a birth chart reading, it could be reading up on occult type things or spiritual things. Really beautiful time for that. It's also about just connecting with people on a spiritual level, making soul connections, really seeing those type of relationships through. Now, some of the challenges that come with this, as always, there can be a weakened sense of ego, right? Or it can be an overblown ego, which looks like spiritual narcissism, where a person is spiritual bypassing, where they're not really like looking at the shadow. It could be unrealistic dreams. It can be things that have to do with deceiving yourself and potentially deceiving others. It can also just having no boundaries, not knowing where things begin and where they end as well. Now, as the sun then opposes Pluto, which is in Capricorn, which is definitely probably our most challenging aspect, I think, of the week. We're going to feel it from the 14th through the 20th, but it's perfecting on the 17th. So this is probably going to be a little bit like of an uncomfortable point for this week, even though our energy, has shifted in a lot of ways. And so this really has to do in terms of like associated with the Little Mermaid with transformation, because Pluto in Capricorn is transformation, potentially transformation of the body. Here's where we actually see her transform and get her wish. Her wish, became true. Her desire manifested itself. And here we see Ursula now as Pluto in Capricorn transforming the mermaid. She essentially has a death rebirth, the death of the mermaid, the birth of the girl. But she lost something and she lost her voice. So now she's trying to navigate having the prince fall in love with her so she doesn't then lose her soul, which is also associated with Pluto, the soul, the spirit, and that level of transformation and the transfiguration of her body. So there's a cost to things, when you do things, and that's what we're coming up against, this opposition. When the sun in Cancer is opposing Pluto in Capricorn, there's a cost. And usually that cost means that something gets left so that you can transform and become something else, so you can have a new experience, so you can get a new body, so that you can be different than the way that you were before as we're going along this heroine's journey. Personal empowerment is something that can come up that's very positive with this. You being more self-directed, being more self-actualized is something that's great. It could be in the shamanic sense, a death of a part of yourself for the rebirth of another part of yourself that's important. It could be facing your shadow. If you've been running away from something, not wanting to deal with something, you're turning around and you're facing it for the first time. It could be building structure and having boundaries and being able to contain things so that you have a secure space from where you're moving from. And that's important, even though these things feel a bit constricted at the time, because they do sometimes. And it can be about finding your voice and unleashing that, and through your voice unleashing your personal power, which is very Plutonian. Now, the challenging aspect of that, because this is an opposition, so the likelihood of us feeling the challenge is very, very great, especially when it comes to the sun, which has to do with ourselves and our ego. The first thing that we think of is potentially dominated or being overpowered by someone else's energy and trying to negotiate that. There's aggressive behaviors that can come out. There could be the death and rebirth of solar figures meaning celebrity, those who are in the spotlight, someone getting canceled and losing their contract, someone potentially losing their life, or the passing away of a solar figure. That can happen with the oppositions. A lot of times Pluto has a lot to do with things that are uncovered, things that are not seen, so it can be spying, it can be lies or mischief, especially by people in power, people who control things that are hiding things. And we can even see that with the Little Mermaid analogy with Ursula, how she takes her voice and then she tries to sabotage Ariel and get the Prince Eric to fall in love with her, so she can steal her soul. So there's a little bit of a like Machiavellian, maniacal like way of like plotting against someone, and those things can be very Plutonian. It could be being drawn into the taboo, being drawn into reckless behavior, and potentially like unleashing sometimes pent up energy, pent up power, and just exploding that. And that can even look like, on a non-transpersonal way, just volcanic activity, if we're talking about it happening just, on Earth, and some of the things that can be unleashed, because there is this unleashing of things, a loss of control. It could be about purging pent up energy or doing a cleanse, whether that be, some people do think of natural disasters as cleansing the space, so to speak, especially if you have volcanic activity or some sort of flooding or things like that. That was the water that you needed, or, the fire burned so that, it opened up the sequoia seeds, so because that's how they grow, so sometimes we have massive destruction that can happen, but from it comes like amazing growth. And we kind of see that in our lives and just the world, as well. A couple of things to think about with this particular transit is you don't want to resist the change if it happens. Resisting the transformation makes the transformation so much more difficult, so much more difficult. So you want to kind of go with the flow. And it's Cancer, so it is a water sign. We're going with the flow, and we're kind of using our emotions to guide us through this particular change that's happening. Another thing that we want to do is we don't want to let the ego get in a place where it gets kind of disseminated because we have a setback. Interestingly enough, just using the analogy again, when Ariel was given legs, she did not have her voice. And so she had to find another way to connect to Eric. And, so much about her and her beauty was actually her voice. It was the first thing that the prince fell in love with. It was the thing that everybody loved about Ariel, actually more than even her physical beauty. So not having the thing that she defined herself by that was the most beautiful, and finding other things about herself that was beautiful so she could get what she wanted, which was to fall in love, was important. So again, not letting some of those kind of egoic things get in your way of moving forward if you need to. And also another thing, just to walk into the change or instigate the change actually makes it a lot easier as well. So if you're the one that says, you know what, this I definitely know needs changing, I'm going to switch some things up, I'm going to do it differently, that can be very powerful for you in terms of the change that you want and really embracing it and moving forward. So I just want to thank you guys so much for joining in for today's astrology chat that we had. Thank you so much for joining. If you haven't joined my channel, please make sure you subscribe and like, and pass it along or tag people depending upon what platform you're watching it on. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on YouTube, I'm on Clubhouse every Wednesday at 1 o'clock Hawaii Standard Time. We talk about all things spiritual, which is just fantastic in there. So definitely come on and join and chat with us about just spiritual things and astrology and tarot and herbs and all that fun stuff. If you have any questions or if you'd like to book a natal chart reading, go to www.thewildwahine.as.me. All my tarot readings are there, all of my astrology readings are there, and my books are open right now, so I do have some space. So thank you guys so much again. Aloha and have a beautiful week.